Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Ben and Brandi Build a Bus here on Remote Ramblers. We're so happy you're here today, and today we are tackling a fun and easy project that would be great for any house. So this is a cabinet that we picked up on, I bet you guessed it, Facebook Marketplace. When we got it, it was gray, so we have gone ahead and primed it. I think it's really important to remember that when you're working in a bus or other high humidity circumstances that you prime with a mold and mildew primer. We personally love the Kills, which is linked in the description below. So it is primed. You can see it's kind of like splotchy in some places. It doesn't matter. That will be fixed at the end. And then we're gonna follow it up to match the rest of our bus and do it in this Sherwin-Williams Tempe Star. Okay, so now that our cabinet has been painted to match the rest of our cabinets, it's time to move on to the rest of the bench creation process. What we've done here is we've created a piece of plywood. Here we're using a half-inch piece of plywood, and we cut it to match the dimensions of the top of our storage container. Now that we have our wood piece, we're going to use it to cut a template for our foam. You can use whatever foam you like. We were gifted an old RV mattress, and so that's the foam we're going to use. What I plan on doing is taking a marker and measuring out probably about like a ½ to an inch in excess on the foam. My original thought is to do one layer, but we're going to try it once we cut it out and see if the density is enough, and if not, then we'll do 2 pieces of foam. So as you saw, all we used to cut the foam was a serrated knife. You can get fancy and use one of those electric turkey cutters if you want, but this works just fine. As you can see here on the edge of the foam, it's not going to be perfect, right? It's not going to be completely flush. You are going to have these like jagged edges, but that's what the batting's for. When you put the batting over it and wrap it around, it'll smooth that right on out. Okay, so once we have the foam cut, we're essentially making a sandwich. We will do the foam on top of the plywood, and then on top of that, we're gonna be cutting this batting. We found this batting for, I think, $10.87 at Walmart. This is a twin size one, but they also had a queen size one if you're doing a larger piece. Now on top of the foam and the batting, we will cut out our fabric. You want to make sure to cut enough that it can wrap fully around and still have some excess, so that way you can play with the tightness of your material. Okay, so after we cut our first foam, we set on everything, and it was not quite dense enough so you could feel a little bit of the board, so we decided to go with 2 pieces of foam. So when you lay everything out, you want to make sure that the pretty side of your material is facing down, okay? And then you put your batting. I double layered our batting because we're not using the highest quality of batting here. And then we have our 2 pieces of foam, and then we have our board. The first side that you staple doesn't have to be perfect, right? You're just trying to get it on there. And then the second side is really where you have to start pulling and stretching your material to get everything tight. This was our first side that we stapled down, and this, just go easy on yourself. It's okay if it's messy. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need to pull anything tight. What you're doing here is just trying to create an edge. Staple down the full length of your bench or whatever you're covering, and if your staples are even a little loose, that's okay, because you may make a mistake and have to pull them up, so I wouldn't worry about loose staples at this point. Now, the second side is the hard side. So this is also the long width, but the second side. And what you're thinking about here is getting this as tight as you possibly can. We made this harder on ourselves because we are using a super stretchy velvet. But if I were you, I would go with something like a thick cotton or a waxed linen or an outdoor fabric, because that's going to be really like thick and not stretchy. So that is sort of like your ideal fabric. All right, guys, here you have it. This is our finished project. We have officially coined her Big Bertha, and I think you can see why. We did decide to go with 2 foam toppers, and this works for us because we wanted this a little bit higher, but if I were you, I'd probably go with 1 foam. Also, while I did say it's the finished project, I wanted to make a note really fast. If you look here, I left these 2 sides a little differently because the hardest thing with this project is going to be your corners. And if it turns out looking professional or amateurish, it's going to be because of how you treat your corners. So this side is very well done. You see it's like a smooth slope into the bench. And this side is more of a bubble. You'll also see that there's some bunching right here with the fabric. And that's because I didn't do the detail work on this one yet. All we'd have to do to perfect this corner of the bench is to pull it a little tighter and add in a few more staples. So, is this a project you think you guys would do? We love it. So if you're into DIY and you want to see more projects like this, we'll see you next Sunday as we turn this ugly old cabinet from drab to fab.